Hi, I'm Tamika Katon-Donegal. Sorry, folks, I'm doing the illusion for a second. Subtle, right? Theater magic.
Hi, everybody. Hi. We did it. True story. May 2025. We started May 2015. Yeah. Yeah. Alex, you were there, right?
Yeah.
I'm so, I don't even know what to say. I'm so proud. And I'm so proud that over these 10 years, people have trusted me to create a space where they can share their truth. And people have shared amazing, powerful stories that now belong to people than themselves. It belongs to a whole world of people. It's part of their experience. And that's our tradition. That's what we do here at True Story. And we need money. I always have to say that if you can. And for those of you who are watching either in the live stream or in the future, if you can spare any money at all, please click on donate and help this program continue and the rest of our programming, which ESTLA is thriving, really, really thriving. And I want you guys to know that this year, being the 10-year anniversary, I think we're at about 35 years for this company, maybe 40. And one of the founding members was Barbara Tarbuck, who started this with me. And tonight we are going to honor her as well. I feel like she is with me all the time. We have her daughter here. We have her grandchild here. We have her words that we will share also, including a video from Tamika Katon-Donegal, who sent it all the way from Jamaica. Poor thing. She's in Jamaica for her husband's birthday. Whatever. She was able to record something for us, so we'll see that as well. I haven't read one of my own stories in a very long time. And that's all I'll say about that. I'm just going to read one to you. Yeah. We good? Uh-oh. I fear we've ruined one of the surprises. Here I am. I haven't really changed, and I remember how itchy that outfit was. But when I tell you, when I hear someone use the phrase a force of nature or a force to be reckoned with, I always assume that they are talking about a woman. Those phrases aren't generally used to regard men. When men are forceful, they're admired. When women are forceful, we're to be reckoned with. Throughout history, women have been shamed for being forceful, but nonetheless, the force has remained strong for generation after generation, or truthfully, none of us would be here at all. When I think of my women ancestors, I am struck by how they persevered through their actions, but I have absolutely no idea what their ambitions were or if they had any to begin with. As far as I've been told, their only ambitions were to be a devoted wife to their husbands and produce children. And their children, if girls, to be raised exactly like them, devoted. For all women in all of our cultures, this has been a shared experience. This is my grandmother, Fanny. I never met her as she died long before I was born. Her own mother died after her younger brother was born, and Fanny, though still a child, raised her two brothers as her own. She then had children of her own. This one here, that's my Uncle Marty. Marty was her second born. He was a breech birth at 13.5 pounds, after which she was told that she couldn't have any more children as the birth had done so much damage to her internal organs, particularly her kidneys. And then she had 4 more. This scary gypsy, we believe, was called Freda. And she is said to have been my great-grandmother on my paternal side. No one's quite sure, but we know she's probably Freda. It is said that just before the First World War, to avoid her sons being inscribed into the army, she insisted that her family go back to the Holy Land, Palestine. It turned out to be nothing but poverty and pestilence for them, so she insisted that they return to Europe. There, through Napoli, they worked as smugglers until they finally got the right ride to get them to America. I believe they actually smuggled themselves here. This angel face is my maternal great-grandmother, Rose. This is her on her wedding day. She was 16 years old. She went on to have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. During World War II, all of her 3 sons were sent to the Pacific. She endured 3 long years of not knowing if she would ever see them again. They all changed, but safe. I knew her quite well. She passed away when I was 15 years old. And what I learned from her, aside from her resilience and patience, was how to cook for a small army. And this is my grandmother, Charlotte. She was beautiful and fun and stubborn and musical, but only at home and only for friends. She was a rock for me growing up, and I am so proud to be hers. This is my mom as a teen. I believe the only happiness my mom found in life was in her children, that and a really good lobster roll. She didn't have hobbies. She didn't challenge herself to be creative. And though she was a very gifted mathematician, she did not pursue it in any way. As far as I know, I am the first woman in my lineage to use my own voice, to use my voice in public, and to share my words publicly. It has been my honor and my joy to create True Story for all of us to be heard. Tonight, we honor all of our mothers, all the brave women we come from, everything they overcame to bring us here, most especially my women writers and Barbara Tarbuck, who nurtured True Story to be, and also those who raised our male artists who are here with us tonight. You're both good boys. When I called Barb to join the first True Story in 2015, she said, "Oh, that sounds absolutely terrifying. I'll do it." And the second time, she sent an email that I couldn't find, so I'll have to paraphrase. Run-on sentence that said something about rape and other assorted terrible things. Bring a fresh hummus from the farmer's market and a lovely Chardonnay. Barb shared all of herself. And here we are tonight, keeping up the tradition of truth-telling, sharing our personal stories and contributing this work for the next generation. That's not her. What's that? Uh-oh. I'm going to get this back later, but you can see, hey, look, she's right down there. Look at that. There she is. That's my niece, Lily. I asked her to take that selfie of herself today so we can see how much of my mother is in her and that she's still here with us today. In her face, I see my mom, my father's mom, and myself. And with that, let us continue. Gordon Henderson, everybody. Come on up, Gordon.
Thank you, Lizzy, for producing True Story all these 10 years. I didn't start at the beginning, but I think it was pretty much soon after. And it has been a great pleasure to be part of the True Story community. And in another setting, I might be interpreted as someone with a personality disorder, but in True Story, I have been welcomed. And I am deeply appreciative of that. In my emotional landscape, May the 4th will always belong to Kent State, 1970. I was a smallish boy, but what came out of the TV that day cannot be erased from my memory, even by an endless stream of memes. Kent State was only about 10 miles from where we lived, so the National Guard came to a college campus near me and shot and killed 4 young people who looked pretty much like my brothers and sister. This was also the time of the historic space travel and the moon landing. People my age at school had dreams of being astronauts. It was my understanding that a prerequisite to becoming an astronaut was that you had to be willing to shit in a vacuum tube. And I didn't see myself doing that. So I turned my back on the business of space travel. It didn't bother me a bit. Then I would never know what it was like to throw my candy wrappers into zero gravity. Similarly, I had little interest in the romantic lifestyles or personal struggles of people in other galaxies, no matter how far away they might be. So when Star Wars exploded onto the big screen, I read the book and left it at that. I didn't like space travelers, but I did like hobos, rockers, bikers, and wharf rats. I also briefly had an interest in hockey and hockey players. I liked the accessories, the uniforms, sticks, gloves, and puck, not to mention the sterile, cold environment of the hockey arena. I liked the players because of their toothless grins and tendency to break things. I knew that outside of Canada or an ice rink or for a select few, the Hockey Hall of Fame, hockey players will not be welcomed anywhere. I saw them as essentially hobos, toothless hobos on ice, who at any moment throw down the gloves and pummel each other mercilessly. Speaking of pummeling, I briefly admired the sport of boxing because boxers were basically nude. They stand there in the ring regarding each other as if in a dance or conversation. Clearly, they do not mean well, but at least they're trying to make a connection. One afternoon, my entire family, even possibly my dad, were watching a boxing match on TV. I became quite moved and got up to go to my room. Before leaving, I told my mother I would be in my quarters and did not wish to be disturbed. I took pains to shut the door tight. It did not lock. I took off my shirt and my room became a boxing ring. I was the announcer, the crowd, and both fighters. The announcer came on and announced, "These prize fighters are so nice that they might be competing without their clothes on." I then took off the rest of my clothes and boxed beautifully. The crowd was absolutely wild. But I digress. According to my sister, I was always my mother's favorite. Maybe because I was the youngest and not above using cuteness to get my way. I don't know to what extent she knew what I was up to. She certainly took an interest in my behavior. She diligently maintained my permanent record, a thick folder containing every bad report a teacher, administrator, or other authority had ever written about me. In addition to this, I received a large envelope of my childhood drawings. I knew this envelope existed. I even knew where it was, but I never looked inside. As I remembered it, it was mostly just drawings of hobos. This year, for the first time in 50 years, I opened the envelope and looked inside. I have some of them with me tonight. Let's take a look. We'll start with a seafaring hobo. Hobos had names which ended in O. Rondo, Pondo, Robo. This one is named Fido, a dog's name. It takes a special kind of man to answer to that name. And you can see he's heavily armed. Action biker, look how happy he is. He's happy because, and his spirit is shining because he's on his bike and he's free. Black eye forward. Flat. Hockey is a game of ongoing catastrophe. That's why we keep watching. Hobo hockey. A noteworthy detail is that the goalie has stored his hat on the back of the goal where it will be safe. Hobo hockey again, this time with added pandemonium. And you can see that again, the goalie has stored his hat on the back of the goal where it was still safe. Wharf rat with hammer and explosives. Here's some vehicle studies. This is the golf basketball collage. I was mildly gobsmacked to see this. It illustrates how little my approach to collage has changed over the last 50 years. Here's a recent example, Noir Vember. I traded hobos for wise guys, which suggests refinement, but at least my admiration for outcasts remains consistent. This is still life with wise guy and rotisserie. In my recent work, let's see, for years I said to anyone who would listen, and many who wouldn't, that my artistic life began at age 16. That was the year that I rewrote the Bible and declared myself an artist. I admit that I had drawings as a child, but I dismissed them as just drawings of hobos, which is to suggest that they were lacking in artistic merit. But after seeing these drawings again, I have to sort of rethink that. It looks like I was drawing them, and I was using drawings the way others might use a plunger to unclog a psychic drain. I mean, you can tell a story, and it may well be a true story, but there's always another way of telling it, and with more told you leave out. And I can thank my mom for this, for reminding me of this, even though she has left this earthly plane. The Grim Reaper, Satan, and the Mad Bull at the White House. This drawing I made at the age of 12 would be easy to dismiss if it didn't speak to our current situation. Everyone has a superpower. Mine comes from pen and paper. If irrational forces engulf me, I know what to do. Buffoons and bullies may be in control, but we have our superpowers and each other to help distinguish what is real and not fall into despair and anguish. It will take imagination to keep the dumb fucks at bay. Thank you.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's Alex Alpharaoh, everybody. We've had a long journey here, Alex.
I know. If you give me a moment here. I know I had to be fancy because I couldn't find paper. Good evening, everyone. When I say that I would not be the artist that I am today if it wasn't for Lizzy Ross, I want to give you a big round of applause for years. And for this program, True Story, I would not be here. I would not be who I am. And that is really an understatement. The support that Liz has given me throughout the years, what a documented journey was born from this program. And Barbara Tarbuck was one of the first people who really saw me, not just as a person or this young kid who was trying to find his way through the arts, but she really saw me as an artist. And although I didn't know her for very long, the few years that I did know her, she became a really good friend. And one of the things that always stands in my mind is that she would always support anything and everything that I was doing. I was looking at the email. The last time she sent me was in August of 2016, letting me know that she was going to come and see the show that I was doing in Boyle Heights, you know. So she helped me find my voice, just like Lizzy throughout the years has helped me find my voice. And I'm going to share that voice with you all today. Is that okay? All right, cool. Let's play. This is based on a true story. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, in the time before the Battle of Yavin, or nuisance government from Gavin that caused galactic outlaws to station in Los Angeles, the rise to the celebrity Death Star who would try to become emperor. This was before my guardian became a force ghost, a constant calamity host who couldn't afford toast or groceries, but openly gave his all to causes he believed. He lived in the shadows during nights of the old republic. Our identities were never public, in fear of things getting hotter than Mustafar lava, which also meant we couldn't escape rule from Jabba because everybody's got to pay dues to the hut, whether we liked it or not. As a force-sensitive child, my stomach was constantly in fear of getting surveillance bots or stormtroopers patrolling the highways. So we learned to hide in plain sight. Forced invisibility like a force push towards infinite obscurity. When I asked my man, though, he simply replied, "This is the way." Father was helmetless, then jarring, with whom I shared many adventures. Those were dangerous and jarring. Some were escapes from death for sure, so it was no surprise that his demise would cause me to seek advice and form ties with practitioners of the dark side. As a mere way to survive and preserve my life, as I embarked on a solo trip through the Selva Salvaje, the savage jungle where animals carried blasters and had their necks blasted with tattoos of barren homelands they left behind in order to travel with pod racers through rancid deserts that resembled Tatooine. Some of my kin were captured and sent back. Some to Order 66 succumbed. All in the name of death, lies and tricks in this capitalist, nihilistic, elitist fractured states of America where politics pit us against each other while the villains aren't even aware of us. Unless we cause a ruckus and are rebranded as the resistance, this is where I bear the war of my Star War. I was a Padawan without a path to lay my head. The path I wandered on had me facing the world head on before I ever built the Empire Galactic. The one that spanned from the coast of the Pacific to the currents of the Atlantic and everything in between. Then, Cali was ruled by Republican Pete, but everyone called him Palpatine. A Sith Lord seated in a vacant Senate seat, sinisterly serenading simple imps with deep-seated hatred, ministering to youth devoted to commiserating over ill parenting, seeking affection from statues, and know how to weigh out statutes of limitations before executing their dark side intentions. These were my first forms of opposition. My earliest force mind tricks were verbal manipulation, a strong midi-chlorian connection that produced mental projections like the one R2 released with instructions from Leia asking for Obi-Wan's help in supporting the Rebel Alliance. Our mere existence was an act of defiance. For we were hunted due to our unlawful presence. I was prevented from legally earning imperial credits as another form of cruel oppression, and I had had enough. My family and I lived in exile like old Ben Kenobi and Boba Fett was hunting us for a bounty, causing us to never leave the borderlines of the county. My mother always preached that the Force was with me and that I was one with the Force, even though I witnessed her fail many trials, but never change course. Shortly after, Mother was taken away to be a slave to a trader named Charlie Baxter. I witnessed Father's attempts to successfully recover her. A few years before he died, he took me to the Jedi Temple, introduced me to masters and other types of important people. He was hoping that they would take me in so I could begin training. He was told I was almost too old, but Master Yoda sensed me yearning. My connection to the Force would be my undoing or a great gift to the world. Direct guidance would secure the latter, and just like that, my tutelage began. Every now and then, I would catch glimpses of Master Kenobi and Anakin. Word had spread about the great Sith fall. Master Kenobi killed Darth Maul and avenged Master Qui-Gon Jinn. I was maybe about 10 when it happened. Less than a year had passed when Order 66 was exercised. It took me a while to realize that if I was going to survive, I would need to remember how to hide. Everyone at the temple I knew was executed. Not even the young ones were excluded. And Anakin had died at the hands of Lord Vader. I was able to escape betrayal, but my master didn't. She held off the clone troopers long enough so I could escape in a cargo shipment. She told me to remember her as she handed me my saber. Her last words to me were, "May the Force be with you." The cargo ship took me to a place they called Windy City. It had only been a few years, and I'd worn my new identity with pride. I was at least a year away from becoming a Jedi, but now I had to stay steps ahead of the ripple effects of the global disaster while trying not to attract attention from Second Sister. And for the next decade, I kept a low profile. Worked jobs and moved every few seasons. Didn't keep any friends in fear of potential treason if ever they found out my status. Force users were vilified, placed amongst the baddest, and pit and rewards were offered to anyone that turned us in. I witnessed friend turn on friend over amounts that were just enough to cover the rent. I've seen good men die over unfounded accusations. Family members turn on each other in moments of desperation. I read in a book once about a man who sold the world, traded his savior with a kiss on the cheek. His silver coins was the peak. It cost him to break his neck with a solitary olive tree since he couldn't take it back. Like the story of the chosen one, who chose to turn his back, which led to the rule of the Sith. This knowledge guided me to constantly move and not sit too long in any one place since I didn't belong. Never forgot my training, even though it took time, since I seen or sensed another Jedi to the day the destiny found me. I earned a reputation for being a solid smuggler. I guess your odds are stacked, puts a target on your back, forcing you to become an angler. Anyway, I was hanging out at Mos Eisley, listening to Ron Isley, waiting to get commission from the next galaxy to kill time. I made friends with a Wookiee named Chewie, who I let beat me at Hollow Chest to prevent ending with a creviced Hollow Chest. For the sake of pride. I asked him if he knew of any work for which I could apply. He introduced me to Han, who was known as one of the best transporters in the galaxy. His death was a mess. He said, "Look, kid, I don't have time to train rookies, but Chewie says you're solid, and I take his word. Do you know about spacecraft tech specs?" I said, "Yes." "You ever heard of the Millennium Falcon?" I replied. It made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. He took a beat and a long look at me with a hint of pride. Took his finger and repeatedly pressed it to my chest. "I only got one rule, kid. That's don't DIE. If you can do that, I will get a tag along, and we'll get along famously." The plan was to simply make an exchange while Han watched my back and Chewie kept the engine going. We went to the pickup spot, but something was wrong. I sensed a disruption in the Force, and before too long, we would change course. Imperial guards had drawn red lightsabers. Han began to fire, hit one, but the other guard went down. He was able to knock Han with a force push, knocking him unconscious. The second guard relaxed. He was no longer anxious. I was a simple strike away from being killed. I projected pictures of my into the guard's psyche so he didn't notice my hand on the hilt. He just finished imaging the moment he struck me when my lightsaber cut like butter right through his body. We made it back to the Falcon, and Han was quiet. He asked me if I was a Jedi in hiding. I shared my life because, as you can probably tell, I'm a pretty good talker. Almost as good as he was with a blaster. He shared that he was married and would like to introduce me to his brother. Shortly after, he took me to meet the great Grand Master, the one and only Luke Skywalker, who offered to finish my training as a Jedi Knight, especially because he knew we were in for the long fight. Thank you.
I'm so sorry this projector is in and out. And whoops, I'm behind. Look at my grandma for a minute. hold on, go catch up. Because one of them is a video of Tamika, so otherwise. Hold on, folks. Here we go. Sorry for all that. Jennifer, is this your first time reading your own words here, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I read my mom's piece
Welcome.
last time. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I spent my whole life in theaters with my mother. And I think I took for granted what a safe, open space it was, because it was always such a just there. So thank you. Thank you for keeping this space here and alive and including us. I'm first going to read a short excerpt from a piece of my mother's called Daddy's Girl. My father died in a fire in 1960 when I was 17. When my mother told me the news, I ran outside and I screamed once, loud and long. I had been to visit my father only 3 weeks before. He was living in a trailer park in Bradenton, Florida, and he was very frail. I phoned my mother from there and told her I needed to bring him home. She told me to leave that foolish dreamer where he is and come home and get on with your life. And now he had died, having set his electric blanket on fire from a cool cigarette. For a time, I convinced myself he had committed suicide. That was easier to get a handle on than this stark, forlorn demise. And I kept quiet about it, all of it. But I started looking, searching for Daddy in every man, boy that I met. And this is a piece of my own called Gentle Parenting. The meanest thing that anyone ever said to me was when my mother asked me how it felt to be just like my father and not live up to my potential. I was a grown woman, a partner, a mother, and I had definitely heard crazier shit from people on the playground, from kids, from so-called friends, from narcissistic actors and coked up directors on sets. But that's the line that haunts me. And my mother was not a cruel woman, as you all know, not at all. She was wildly supportive and utterly devoted to me, her only child. And she was fearlessly and unapologetically honest in just about everything that she did. And she was right. I was bullshitting and I needed to be called out. At once, an assault and a gift, a blow and a push, a condemnation and a challenge to do better. I still feel her rage and fear and disappointment and hope and insistence that I could do better. And isn't that the razor-thin tightrope of parenting? I walk it every day, balancing, teetering, stumbling between giving unconditional loving support and teaching discipline and accountability and independence. Never really knowing if I've got it right, if I'm pushing too hard or enabling too much. Gentle parenting is a phrase that I hear a lot these days, and it's a beautiful and well-intentioned philosophy, one that I'm sure my older children can tell you that I don't follow. And I can see my mother's reaction to the phrase gentle parenting. She and my father used to say that theirs was the only generation that had to obey both their parents and their children. But despite their not so gentle roots, they raised me with a love, openness, curiosity, and wonder that I hope my children feel from me. There were many gentle moments, but also plenty of tough ones too. I keep thinking of the nature videos where birds shove their chicks out of the nest so they can take their first flight, of dolphins who ignore their calves to teach them independence, big mammals expecting their young to walk long, long distances almost from birth. Nature is not gentle, and life is not gentle. So should childhood be? Is constant validation the right approach? Is it really the best way to foster resilience in this world of constant change and challenges? I have no idea. If I couldn't actually hear my mother's brutally honest voice in my head, would my path have been different? Would I have been so determined, especially since her death, to raise my own expectations for myself to meet the ones that she had set for me? I don't want to shove my children out of the nest, but I don't want them to forget that they can fly. Now, when I hear my mother's words in my head, I am pretty confident that I have proved her wrong. And that, I think, was exactly her point. And my mother was a force that I still feel with me. And may her force be with you.
Here's Tamika, everybody.
Hi, and I am in beautiful Montego Bay, Jamaica, here for my husband Eric's birthday. I knew Barbara from EST, but what was an admiration and respect from afar became a really beautiful and loving friendship when she directed me in Vanya, Sonia, Masha, and Spike. And when I read Birthday Wish, which is the piece I'm about to read, it resonated a lot being an actress of a certain age, celebrating a birthday. And figuring out what's next. So, here we go. Birthday wish. I never felt older than on my 35th birthday. My biological clock was ticking loudly, and there was no steady bow in the picture. Did I want a child so much I would do it on my own? No, was my resounding answer. Maybe later, if I met someone steady and or I had some real money. Besides, I was just experiencing birthday blues and I had lines to learn. I was in a theater company called Stage West in Massachusetts at the time. I was their lead actress. My leading man in both Ganae's The Balcony and Odette's Country Girl was making nearly a third more than I was. I mean, we're talking maybe $80 or more a week in those days, but still. The day after my birthday, I decided to go to the producer to protest this inequity. Actually, my roles were larger than his in both shows, and the producer was a woman, so I felt I had some ground to stand on. Well, I was told that my leading man had a family, so of course he would get more money. What a gut punch. Furious and humiliated, I berated my shabby, singular life. I was not part of a family at all. It felt like the pathetic other woman in a terrible sitcom. Determined to make a change, I came out to LA to shoot the pilot of California Fever. Finally, I would make my fortune and my life would start for real at 36. Oddly, it happened. Well, not exactly the fortune, but much more money than I'd made to date in New York. And that included a Broadway show, David Mamet's Water Engine. I expected to hate LA. All New Yorkers did in those days. But I found the topography startling. And the homes varied and interesting. And the hills and the ocean and the West Side at twilight stunning. I also didn't find the producers and directors ignorant, like I was told they surely were. Cynical, maybe, and pandering for a buck, obviously, but dumb? Not a chance. I drove my rental car to our first read-through. I played mom to series regular Jimmy McNichol. You remember him, right? Famous for being the brother of an established TV star, Christy McNichol? That's right. I mean, that seemed to be his sole qualification for the gig. The director, who had been a veteran from I Love Lucy fame, tapped out Jimmy's comic timing bits. Da-da, 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 da-dum. At the close of the day, Jimmy's black stretch pulled up curbside. So, this is what my friends had been warning me about. The first shoot day was by the ocean, somewhere in Malibu. An elderly woman stood alone by the makeup trailer wearing a wet suit and flippers. She was smoking a cigarette and didn't look happy. And the young people walking in and out of the makeup trailer ignored her completely. I don't think they had a clue who she was. It was Sylvia Sidney, a very famous old-school Broadway star who had worked regularly with the likes of Henry Fonda and Bette Davis, as well as filming the original Street Scene and many Playhouse 90 television shows. I introduced myself and she growled, "I've been standing here in this heat for 30 minutes, and these kids are just going to makeup now? What have they been doing?" "Oh, this is all new to me," I said. "You're from New York, aren't you?" "Yes," I answered. "I can tell. You're on time." You know what is amazing about today? I just IMDb'd Sylvia Sidney and discovered she was younger when I met her than I am now. She was only 69, and I had referred to her as elderly. I looked at the director of California Fever, Mark Daniels. Sure enough, he had I Love Lucy and Alice credits galore. Back to my story. It was September 1978, and my good friends from graduate school, Stephen and Suzanne Macht, invited me to a Rosh Hashanah dinner in Beverly Hills. The Santa Anas had hit, and the temperature was 106 degrees. And I drove to their house, and I was thinking I would really like to pack up and head east. You know, fall is the best time in New York. I was heading over early to have a swim in their pool. I mean, surely that would help. As I pulled myself out of the pool, the most gorgeous man I had ever laid eyes on was standing right above me, smiling down at my dripping hair. And of course, I was seated across from him at dinner wearing not a stitch of makeup. I knew I wasn't even in the ball game with this crowd. Oh, what the hell. But he kept talking to me and telling me he wanted to take me out to Death Valley. He said his name was James, like his father, but everybody called him Denny. It's an Irish Brooklyn thing, he told me, in a voice that was resonant and warm. "Where were you born?" I asked. "Brooklyn." "Really? You don't sound it." "My parents were Canadian." "Mine too." "I know." I had an early work call the next morning, and I left feeling a bit uncomfortable because I gathered he had learned a lot about me from the mocks, while I had been told absolutely nothing about him. So this had been planned behind my back? I've always found the idea of a fix-up loathsome. Boy, I am not a good candidate for online dating. And it's even worse than a blind date because you have to audition. Well, Denny phoned me the next day and asked me to go see a film in Westwood with him that weekend. It was some weird Japanese film where she cuts off his penis in the end, and somehow we got the giggles afterward and we walked around Westwood, which at that time was snuggly and fun. And that date lasted about 36 hours. It wasn't long before we moved in together. We found a charming cottage at the foot of the Hollywood Hills, and Denny told me that, like Tolstoy, he wanted to write a book, plant a tree, and have a child. By now I was pushing 38, and I had no idea if I could still conceive. I'd been pregnant only once when I was 21, and that had terminated. For years, I wished for a child to erase that pain, but not without a caring partner. So I said, well, we can try. Denny said, let's go to Vegas and get married. No, knock me up and we'll talk about it. I was giddy with the myriad of choices my career and newfound love were offering. So I went for a physical through the Screen Actors Guild. It was in a high-rise somewhere on Wilshire Boulevard. I figured I was pretty fit, but I was met by a scrawny, annoying young doctor who told me I was physically unimpaired, but far too set in my ways to consider being a mother at this late date. On the elevator ride down, I felt like I was playing out the Anne Bancroft scene from Pumpkin Eater, where she whirls around and round in Harrods department store. I mean, I was circling round and round and crying and trying not to pass out in the elevator. I felt so utterly stymied and useless. You know, today, I would have pulled that little shit up on charges. Where was he getting off, set in my ways? If there's one thing I have learned in this life, is that the whole damn ride is about changes. Anyway, after 10 months of trying, I got pregnant. I went to a women's clinic on Venice Boulevard to take the test. 2 women came into my room after the testing and probing. They were both very serious. One of them spoke in a hushed tone. Yes, the test is positive. Really? I sat upright on the gurney. I was smiling ear to ear. You want it? The other nurse asked. I was there alone and wore no ring. Yes, absolutely. And they both broke into smiles. Well, let's get you started with vitamins and a referral doctor. Denny and I were married on shipboard in San Pedro, surrounded by a dozen guests, including Denny's sister and our friends, the Mocks. My mother let me know she would not be coming and was humiliated that I had conceived in sin and wouldn't come. Boy, the humiliation thing covers a lot of territory with women. I had to take the amniocentesis test for possible birth defects because of my age. And back then, you didn't do the test until the end of the 4th month, a really lousy time to abort for sure. I can still hear the nurse on the other end of the phone the evening of the results. She read off blah, 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 negative, blah, 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 negative, blah, 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 negative. Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure if negative meant good. I mean, it certainly didn't in school. But when she asked if I wanted to know the sex, I believed we were on track. Quite convinced I was carrying a boy, I said, yes, please. It's a girl. Wow. We went to Lamaze classes with an eccentric French woman who told me, Barbara, I never know what to expect from actresses. You either will go with the whole experience or you will fight it all the way, tooth and nail, to the end. Well, that was saying red rag to a bull. Of course I was determined to be brilliant, and I was. No drugs, no epidural, no stitches. A 4.5-hour labor. It was so perfect, we made the Channel 2 local news, complete with a follow-up family interview. I mean, by today's standards, I wasn't that old. I wouldn't turn 39 for 7 more weeks. Jennifer's golden hair was apparent from the moment I crowned. Such an interesting mirror effect looking up from the gurney. It took my breath away to catch my first glimpse of her. And it gave me the strength to take an even bigger breath and then push out. And she came. This was on Wednesday, November 26, 1980. And we had planned to spend Thanksgiving with a group of our friends. Since Denny was such a great chef, we knew he could handle the cooking if I wasn't up to it. My due date was November 28th, and everybody knows first babies are always late, unless they're not. So our friends trooped up to Cedars-Sinai to offer to have dinner with us, Thanksgiving dinner, and stayed all night with us in the hospital and next morning. I started the breastfeeding cycle. You know, it takes a while for the milk to come in, apparently. At first, it was very clear liquid. When it did finally come in, we were home in our bed, and Denny rolled over into me. Ow! What? Denny asked. Was that your breast? I thought I bumped into your elbow. Dolly Parton had nothing on me. At every Thanksgiving thereafter, Denny liked to tell the story of how he ate his favorite Thanksgiving dinner down in the cafeteria of Cedars-Sinai Hospital, while his wife and one-day-old baby girl rested upstairs. And I can still hear Denny say, Jennifer, beautiful, brilliant Jennifer, you are a gift. There's an old wives' tale that says the mother forgets all the pain and discomfort and fear giving birth. It's not that. No one forgets, but it's overtaken by the joy and promise and wonder of this tiny being who graces our lives and fills us with an exquisite love.
Paige.
Yes, please. I've just been so moved by the force of Barbara, and I've been emotional all day, so bear with me. I took a little excerpt of something that I read about Barbara years ago, right after she passed, and I'm going to be reading the rest of Daddy's Girl that Jennifer started. So I'll start off with I have mommy crushes. My mom was sick since I was a baby, and she passed away when I was 11, leaving me untethered to a maternal soul who would reassure me that though the world is cruel and bodies are weird, everything's going to be okay. So I would look for those rare, intuitive beings who knew where the love is needed and are brave enough to give it. the big hearts who know how to mother the world. My gateway crush, or mommy crush, was Julie Andrews, and my biggest was Barbara Tarbuck. I first met her at the Theatricum Botanicum. I was understudying a show that she stole, and she was my mentor when I first joined EST. And all at once, she was coquettish and clever and completely charming, and so vibrant. Most of you here, I'm assuming, know her. But if you didn't, this was her often on stage. She flirted with her audience. And she readily, easily, and happily gave love. She emitted joy. And I have always envied and admired that quality in a person. I really wish I were better at it. And it came so naturally to her that she just genuinely loved people and she got excited about them. And she found the special in people. And so I loved reading this piece of Barbara's because I related to it so much that she lost her dad too soon. And she sought daddies. And when the shit hit the fan, she sought her mom. And the final message of it is sadly all too timely and relevant. So I'm going to find where. Okay, so I'm picking up from where Jennifer left off. She said, I started searching for daddy in every man boy I met. My first daddy boyfriend was balding at 35. He was woolly and cuddly, but not daddy. Daddy was quiet and knowledgeable. He had taken me to the library with my brother on Tuesday evenings after dinner from the time that I was 3. I was a student at Wayne State University and living at home with my mother and doing plays, many, many plays, which kept me out late, especially when I would join a crowd at the Vern's Bar in Woodward Avenue after rehearsals. And then I was cast in my first major serious role, Sophie Treadwell's Mackinac. I played a young woman passed around and abused by multiple men in power. I loved it. My pain caused a stir in the audience and excitement in my soul. My leading man was a gorgeous graduate student with wavy blonde hair and soft blue eyes and a luscious curl to his lips when he looked at me. It made me want to dive into his mouth. Greg lived at the Lutheran Church Rectory next door to the theater. He got free rent because his job was caretaker of the building, and late at night, the whole place was ours. It was exhilarating to be just the two of us in this remarkable cathedral. He took my hand and led me up the winding stairs to his apartment, and he told me not to worry, that he would take care of me. It was my 21st birthday. What could possibly go wrong? There were flowers and wine and poetry, and he lifted me onto his bed. I can still feel that lift. Oh, had I known a damn thing about birth control. All of it was illegal in 1963 for single women, you see. High school health classes in the 50s told us about the 5 food groups. I continued to visit Greg at his late night quarters for several weeks, mostly driving home late to collect my schoolwork and be back on campus at 8 a.m. I was carrying a 20-credit load and a full scholarship and a student assistantship. I had not menstruated for 8 weeks when I finally confronted him. We were in my father's 1954 green Oldsmobile that I had inherited. I asked Greg, with my head looking into my crotch, if he thought it was possible. My voice was thin. The raw me was about 6. He answered, well, it's possible. I picked up my mother from work at the hospital at 3:30 the next day and let her guess the problem, and she took over with controlled rage. And she phoned our family doctor. I fantasized finishing my degree in June, having the baby, and getting a job to support us both. No, marriage was my first thought. I'd gone to Greg, and he had sighed, well, I guess we'll have to get married. No hugs of comfort or tender excitement. In fact, he looked depleted. Pride or shock or shit, I don't know what made me say, the doctor said I don't have to have it. It was all becoming unreal. Mama was the only reality, and I ran back and stayed with her ugly talk about men and sex and filth, and my stupidity, and the process began. Trips to the doctor, who had delivered me, as he stretched and probed inside my vagina with steel pointers, hormonal injections and pills, hot baths, and no explanation of any of it. And then 2 weeks later, in a shallow pan in the toilet, a huge red blob released itself. The sensation was a fantastic release, an orgasm of sorts. I looked and probed the mass for a tiny fetus, and then it seemed to drop from my brain a huge head and body of a dead child, perfect in construction, right in the blood cushion. I covered it with toilet paper as I had covered dead birds in the spring I had tried to save when they fell from their nests, so long before that. I wandered the hall like a sexless midnight washerwoman in my drab yellow robe and cotton socks. The front door opened, my mother was there. She gave me a penicillin injection and cried. We were pieces of the same, locked into a foolish melodrama that secrets and ignorance perpetrated for generations. It wasn't until I delivered my beautiful baby girl in 1980 that I truly started my family. It's still not easy to tell you this story, but I want you to know what it was like when contraception was illegal and sex education did not exist and nobody talked about anything important. 52 years later, I have waited. Learn from me. Judge me if you must, but learn from me.
Paige. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Tamika. Thank you, Gordon, Alex, Isadora, Christopher. Where are you? Oh, hi. Thank you, Christopher. You're a good boy. Thanks, everybody. I baked you cake, and there's cheese, and there's a lot of beer. Again, if you can donate, wonderful. The next true story will be June 1st. Isadora, you there? What should we say about June 1st? I am going to tell. Do you, what was the title we came up with?
No.
The theme is You Got This. Isadora, myself, and a few others who have experienced cancer are going to be reading some personal stories of that. Yeah, it's going to be cancer night. Super fun. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's important. Tonight has reminded me how important it is to talk about the things that no one wants to talk to, or people push under the rug, or people are afraid of, quite frankly. And I have to tell you, when you get a scary diagnosis, the most important thing that you can remember is just one breath at a time. You don't feel scared. You feel everything, but nonetheless, you continue. The idea is to continue and to share it with folks so that they know if it ever happens to them, they're going to continue. And that's why when people tell you, when you get diagnosed, people say, you got this, which is a totally ironic thing to say because you got it. But remember, you got this, right? We got this. We're all going to be okay. It's a scary time, but we have each other and we have our stories and we have our voices. So let's use them. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Please go eat the cheese.